It is the great Mel Kiper on Wilde Tausch. Mel, good morning. Thanks for joining us. How are you, buddy?
I'm surviving. I was just told this morning that Johnny Unitas couldn't play in the NFL right now by Field Yates. I'm a little fired up right now, to tell you the truth.
Well, Packers fans are fired up, too. I know we only have you briefly, shorter than normal, and I tend to be long-winded, as you well know. So I'm going to talk fast like you do when you're talking about prospects. Tell me about Emeka Egbuka, because the Packers are having him in on a visit, and Packers fans haven't seen a wide receiver drafted in the first round since 2002 in Javon Walker.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought that's why I put Jack Besh, the wide receiver from TCU, in the second round of the Packers. The comp would be Jordy Nelson. But in terms of Emeka Egbuka, a professional receiver. He blocks. He'll make the tough catch in traffic. Unselfish player. Ran 4.48, so he didn't run quite as fast as they thought he would. Their camp thought maybe 4.39 to 4.42, but it wasn't 4.5 to 4.55 like some thought. So good hands. Had a couple drops this year, but it was just concentration drops. That's it. He's got really good hands. Precise route runner, can play slot or wide. Just a great kid. Just like I say, a true professional in his approach. Studies the game. Works hard. First one on the practice field. I mean, he's just all about ball. So Emeka Egbuka, I think late first, early second round.
Mel, you have the Packers going outside linebacker. What position group do you think there's the most depth at? Because I think any defensive lineman Packer fans would be pretty excited about, wide receiver, corner. What position group do you think is the deepest in this year's draft?
Well, I think that each one you can find a couple guys that might slip through the cracks, but I do think defensive tackle in particular is good. Edge rushers, it's kind of, some people are high on some, a little excited about others, and down on some. So Michael Williams is who I gave the Packers in the first round, had the ankle injury, and that prevented him from having the year expected, but he played through that injury. He didn't shut it down like a lot of guys do these days when they get hurt, just preparing for the NFL draft, getting healthy. So I give Mike Williams a lot of credit. He didn't test great, but like I said, I would have loved to have seen him at 100% all year, and he still produced some disruptive plays and some hurries and sacks off the edge. So I debated him or Maxwell Hairston, the corner from Kentucky, who had a big year 2 years ago. Then he had the shoulder injury this year. He tested great, ran under 4.4. He's the kind of guy I think goes in the late first round. So there's going to be some corners that you're going to be looking at. Olufemi Oladejo from UCLA is a pass rusher moving up. Donovan Ezeraku, pass rusher from Boston College, moving up. So there are going to be some pass rushers and some corners that are going to be there at that point for the Packers to consider.
Mel, when you look at this wide receiver crop, we've talked with you every year, and they've been so good for so long. Not as good this year as a whole. How do you view it?
It's not. It really isn't. I think certainly Travis Hunter is a great player, but he can play corner or wide receiver. But Matthew Golden has come on to really establish himself as the number one wide receiver. You just take Travis Hunter out of the equation. Tedero McMillan has slid down just a bit, but I still like him coming out of Arizona. We talked about Egbuka. Luther Burden III was expected to be out of Missouri, a top 15 pick. His stock dropped. It's come back a little bit. I think he's a borderline late first, early second. I mentioned Jack Besh from TCU. His teammate Savion Williams has a chance to be a good second, third-round pick for somebody. And Jaden Higgins from Iowa State's moved up to the point where he could be, like I say, solidly in that second-round discussion, as will his teammate, Jalen Noel from Iowa State. And an underrated player, I think, is my kid here right around in my area, in Maryland, the Terrapins, is a kid named Ty Felton, who caught a lot of passes. I thought tested well, good athlete with sure hands and toughness. Kyle Williams is a really good game-breaker, deep threat out of Washington State. So there are some guys. Jalen Royals, Utah State, a little underrated. But these are all these guys I'm mentioning are basically, I think 6 to 7 will go in the second. I think another 5 or 6 in the third. So first round, though, you're probably going to only have, after Hunter, 2 to 3 probably. Some think 4. I think 2 to 3 receivers after Hunter go in the first round.
Mel, outside of Abdul Carter, is there a surefire, this guy is going to be able to get after the quarterback at a high level right away? Because that's a spot I know Packer fans are looking at saying, man, we could use some upgrades along that group.
Yeah, Mike Green from Marshall I have going to Atlanta. If he were around, he certainly had a tremendous year, as did Ezra Raku from Boston College. They were the two best in terms of most production, the two best pass rushers this year in college football. Oladejo moved from off-ball to outside at UCLA and really came on. He's a name to just think about in the late first, early second round. People are getting more enamored with him as we move through the process. And really the polarizing player in this group is James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. I thought he would be back in August, really competing with Michael Williams, maybe be a top 5 pick or number 1 pick overall. Didn't produce the results expected. Tested pretty well, but he's a borderline first-round pick too, so he'll be in that mix when the Packers are on the clock. So overall, after that group, there's a drop-off. I like David Walker out of Central Arkansas. I think he's a late 2, but after that, there's not a lot to speak of. So no, this is not a year in terms of you got to get lucky. You got to get really fortunate. Even a Shamar Stewart, the number 1 true defensive end, he had 1.5 sacks this past year. He'd had 0 sacks the last 7 games the last 3 years. So we're not talking about a lot of guys you're going to say, boy, they're coming out with great numbers and great production and dominated over a 1-2 year period. We're not seeing that in terms of the pass rushers coming out this year, outside of Abdul Carter, who this year, when he was unleashed off the edge after playing off ball, put up huge numbers. So he's the special guy. Carter is. That's why he's going 2nd or 3rd in the draft. And all these other guys are going, mid to late. Most of these guys late first round.
Talking with Mel Kiper on Wilde Tausch. Mel, you mentioned Shamar Stewart. He came in for a visit as well, and we know that Goody doesn't squander his top 30 visits on subterfuge. Give our fans a little bit better idea because, as you mentioned, the production not there, the potential there, though. What do you feel about him? I see you've got him going 29th right now to the Commanders.
Yeah, I thought about 17 to the Bengals. There were plenty of spots you could put Shamar Stewart if teams want to roll the dice on talent. Talking about a kid that he's the LTPer of this draft at defensive end. He looks the part. You put him in a computer and you say, what do we need physically, athletically? Checks every box. But then you say, okay, if you want production, and when you watch him, he's blocked by guys who aren't going to play in the NFL. I mean, it's just not the fact that people say, well, he got hurries. I went to games where he just wasn't dominating. He wasn't making his presence felt against guys, like I say, who are not going to be playing in the National Football League on those offensive lines that he went up against. That's disturbing. That certainly has to be concerning when you talk about 1.5 sacks, not only this year, but each of the last 3 years, okay? That's 4.5 for his career. As I said, the last 7 games of the last 3 seasons, he did not record a sack. Now, Oweh came out of Penn State, went to my Baltimore Ravens, didn't have a sack his final year at Penn State, had 10 sacks this past year with the Ravens. He's still not a great pass rusher. He's not what they thought he would be, but he had sacks this past year. Hunter came out of LSU, went in with the 4th round, has 99 career sacks. Danielle Hunter does. So there have been, outliers, guys that didn't have the sack production in college that did in the NFL, but they're few and far between.
Thank God you talk fast because I know we're limited on time. Mel, your often radio co-host Gabe Neitzel, who says hello, by the way, is concerned.
Oh, silent Neitzel. There we go.
He is concerned about the Packers' cornerback group, especially if they're going to move on from Jair Alexander. What do you see in this draft, both around where they're picking at 23 and then later on in the draft that they could get on day 2 or day 3?
Well, that's like you say, what can they get down the line? And I think if they don't take the corner, in the first-round corners that will be in the mix will be Maxwell Hairston, Kentucky, and Azarie Thomas from Florida State, and Trey Amos from Ole Miss. I think there's a couple injured corners that are going to be interesting. Benjamin Morrison and Savone Rebel Jr. were hurt this year, didn't finish out the year, only played early on, and didn't have this final year to really rise up boards and get into the first round. Where will they go? Medical is going to be big for both Morrison and Rebel Jr. Darian Porter out of Iowa State's raw, talented, be great on special teams early on. What does he develop into? Then you get into a lot of guys that are hit or miss. So it's not there's a lot of guys that have a chance, but they're not defined. So most of these other corners are 3rd, 4th rounders. Guys like Quincy Riley, Louisville, Caleb Ransaw, Tulane, Mac McWilliams, UCF, down to Upton Stout from Western Kentucky. It's just not a lot of guys that you say, I know what I'm getting here. I know I get a potential starter. I might get a nickel dime, but I'm not necessarily getting even a number 2 corner. So that's a position you got to just, like I said, you got to get the right guy because there's going to be some disappointments in that group.
All right, Mel, we got to get your Badger guys' evaluations. Hunter Wooler, I think, is going to be the first Badger off the board. What do you see from him? Where do you think he's going to go?
I think he goes day 3. It just depends upon whether it's the 5th, 6th, 7th round area. I liked him at Wisconsin. Obviously, a really good player. He tackles well. He's got a chance in the NFL. We thought Jim Leonard come out of his program, and then we gave him a shot. And look what Jim Leonard developed into. Hunter Wohler's going to have a chance to make a team, and we'll see what happens in terms of down the road. DK left to go to Florida, the wide receiver, and he's moved up to the point where he could be in the mix to maybe be a 3rd-round draft choice. So overall, I think you look at where Wohler will go. Like I say, somewhere mid to late day 3.
And how about Jack Nelson and Joe Huber, both offensive linemen? And I know you have a high affinity for Wisconsin linemen.
Some of them,
where do you
anyway.
think those guys go? Yeah,
I do. Jack Nelson, definitely. Jack Nelson right now is my 10th. He has the same grade as anywhere between 10 and 13 on the offensive tackle board right now. I have a 3rd, 4th round grade on Jack Nelson. So, yes, he will go probably ahead of Wohler the way it looks right now and be a guy. Like I said, DK left to go to Florida. He'll be, I could say, in that 3rd round mix. But I think you would look at Jack Nelson as a guy. And an offensive tackle group where a lot of these guys are projecting to guard. It just has not turned out to be a great group of tackles. After you get past maybe the 12th, 13th tackle, good luck on that. So you're going to have to, most of these guys will be late-round picks. So there's not a lot of depth at that position because, like I said, a lot of these guys, I'm moving inside to the guard spot.
Hard to believe that Tausch's projection for a Wisconsin pick was not as accurate as yours was. Mel, we know you got to do TV. We appreciate you. You're the best. Thanks.
Say hi to Gabe for me.
Will do. That is Mel Kiper Jr.